Hi, I'm Cynthia Zierhead, and I am a licensed clinical and developmental psychologist. I am here to share with you our work in the Early Start Denver model in a group environment. And as you recall, Dr. Sally Rogers started the Denver model, the precursor to the ESDM, in Denver in a preschool. And she was able to utilize Denver model principles successfully to help children grow and develop in a number of areas. She also took that preschool implementation and disseminated it in community-based preschools in Denver. So we have a strong foundation for work in a group or preschool environment for the ESDM. The Early Start Denver model was applied in a group environment in a child care center in Melbourne, Australia, with our colleagues, Dr. Cheryl Dissanayake and Dr. Giacomo Vivanti. At that child care center, we were able to pilot and practice how the Early Start Denver model would look and be implemented in a group environment. So it is my pleasure to share this work with you, as well as talk to you about adaptations from a childcare or daycare environment to maybe a clinic or group environment that isn't a preschool. So the idea is that the Early Start Denver model can be adapted to a number of different types of group environments. What does a group environment mean? It could include a child with autism spectrum disorder and other children also who have ASD, or it could be a child with ASD and typically developing children that serve as peer models in activities or even throughout the day. So I hope you enjoy this lesson on the Early Start Denver model in a group environment. One of the things I think about when we're implementing the Early Start Denver model in group is the questions you might get from parents or other professionals. Does this mean that the Early Start Denver model is diluted in a group environment? Can you implement ESDM in a group and also have one-to-one sessions? I hope to answer those questions, as we have learned that the ESDM in a group environment can facilitate lots of different learning activities for children that may or may not be accessible in a one-to-one therapeutic setting. For example, children learn cooperative play with other children. They learn how to read the social cues of other children and teachers in facilitating transitions from one activity to another. These are skills that help the child transition to mainstream school environments. How does the ESDM fit in preschool settings? Well, in our experience, the fact that the Early Start Denver model is both naturalistic and developmental affords a unique opportunity to place it into preschools that often emphasize those very things. So the opportunities for children to play with real-life play materials, toys, and games. And the developmental curriculum is often valued by teachers and staff who desire to follow a child's progress along with the understanding of developmental sequences. So what are our goals for the children who participate in group ESDM? Well, generally, we hope that children will learn to participate independently in a variety of group opportunities. I will begin to share with you different types of group activities, very small group activities to large group activities. We hope that children will learn to communicate both with adults, such as staff, but more importantly, with peers, communicating both expressively using speech and language as well as nonverbal gestures. We encourage children to manipulate objects appropriately, to build the foundation for appropriate play skills, to play both alone, independently, but also with other children, with the items that are available in the environment. We want for children to be independent around their own materials, their own belongings. We want to develop personal independence skills. The preschool or group environment allows for children to practice taking coats off, hanging them up on a hook, having a lunchbox and placing it in a cubby, taking that lunchbox out and securing a space at a table and having lunch with their own items. We want for children to interact spontaneously with their friends, to initiate interactions and have opportunities to create rich play themes, whether it's playing in the dramatic play area or playing with a puzzle. As we would expect in the one-to-one facilitation of the Early Start Denver model, we expect in the group delivery that children will have accelerated progress in all domains of development, and we want them ready for that next learning environment. So let's start with the classroom. One of the quotes from the manual written by Dr. Sally Rogers and Dr. Geraldine Dawson is that the environment or the classroom does not look or feel different from any other well-designed and well-structured toddler or preschool classroom or environment. This helped us frame our conceptualization about how the structure or the space should look in a classroom. As you're passing by a classroom for the G-ESDM, it really shouldn't look any different than any other preschool environment or group environment for young children. We want for children to be able to operate in this classroom or in this space independently. So therefore, we want the spaces and the boundaries to be defined well visually. So it's very clear for children how they might move from one space to another. Obviously, for all children, we want to reduce distractions. Classrooms are busy spaces. They're noisy. They have lots of movement in it. So we want to have as much visual clarity as possible. We want the paths to be clear so that children understand how to move from outside to inside, from center to center. And everything that's available should be accessible for children and also should define the function or the play space. So like any preschool, you'd expect a dramatic area and a craft table. These are just some examples of materials that are provided for children that help them to understand what they are to do in that space. One of the questions we often get asked, often by teachers, is, are visual schedules appropriate in the G-ESDM classroom? They can be, for specific children who need them. We don't apply it to every child in the classroom. Some children are able to take the normal social cues of other children or a teacher saying it's time to go to group and transition successfully. And for those children, we wouldn't want them reliant on a visual schedule. But for some children who aren't yet ready to take those cues and move from one space to another, we might help them with a visual schedule. We have a decision tree, just like we have in the ESDM, that helps guide you in making decisions around what alternative communication devices we might need for children. As important as the classroom and space is for children and staff, so is a plan. Each day must be carefully planned out for children to learn as much as they can in that time that you have them. So for our staff or therapists implementing the G-ESDM, we want to make sure that they have a guide map for each part of the day, so that each part of the day they know where they are supposed to be and are assigned a place and a role for each activity and transition. This helps them to prepare the facilitation of learning for those children in those activities. We also need a plan for the children so that they have a wide variety of activities to learn in. They need a schedule that includes small group activities and large activities, activities outside, activities inside, and activities that are going to target the many objectives that they have. So each child has their own individual schedule, as well as there being a classroom schedule that we would follow. A consistent schedule or plan of activities for children is very important, both for the staff, but certainly for the child as well, so that they can learn all of the different types of activities that they're going to be participating in, and they have that sense of predictability that helps facilitate comfort in a group environment. We also want to make sure that all of our activities are balanced out to modulate the arousal or learning state of the child. Just like in the ESDM, we carefully think through activities that are very focused, such as art activities or puzzles, things that are at the table, with sensory social routines or big group motor activities to optimize the learning state of the child throughout the group time. Here's a typical preschool daily routine. And what I'd like to share with you is how we may target different objectives through each of these activities. So children arrive in the morning. This is a prime opportunity to greet them, work on greetings, and also help them with personal independence skills, such as taking their coat off, hanging it up on a hook, putting their belongings in a cubby. Children might then transition to the various play centers that you've carefully planned out that target a number of domains. That could be fine motor, such as an art activity. It could be a dramatic play theme with teddy bears and a tea set. In outside play, we have the opportunity to work on gross motor skills and also participation in social games, such as Duck, Duck, Goose. In group time, we might select specific children to comprise a small group activity, where we might very clearly and specifically target specific objectives that each of the children need to work on. I'll show you some examples very soon. Meal times offer us the opportunity, once again, to return to those personal independence skills around utilizing utensils, but also social skills, such as passing items from one person to another and having small conversations at the table during meals. We found quiet activities and rest time to be a really nice opportunity to teach children how to play independently and quietly so that other children could rest and or engage in activities such as reading or just simply playing with a toy in a more reserved fashion. If you are able to offer play centers more than once in a given period of time, like this sample schedule shows, that allows children to return to activities they may or may not have had an opportunity to play in. So we can track how children move from center to center such that they don't avoid specific centers that they maybe don't enjoy or are not as well skilled in. In this sample schedule, snack time and outside play repeat. I'd like to highlight the idea of group time. Group time often refers to larger group activities, so different than the small group activities I was discussing before, where we select specific children. This group time, all children are invited to attend. When they're ready to sit in a large group and listen to a teacher read a book, we have a great opportunity to work on those skills that are required for kindergarten large group activities. Next, I'd like to talk about the idea of the lead. We found that it is very important for parents and other staff to have a primary caregiver model so that there's one or maybe two staff members at most that are thinking about the child and the family in a larger group environment. So that lead might be the person who assesses the child every 3 months and writes objectives and is generally concerned with tracking the progress of the child. It helps for families to know whom they should talk to if they have concerns about their child's development, their progress, or even behavioral issues. And that person is able to coordinate with all of the staff and other programs that the child may be participating in. We find it also is key for transitional times, such as when a child is entering a group environment or moving on to the next environment, that there's one to two people who really know the child and the family. The G-ESDM, like the ESDM, implements the curriculum every 3 months. That assessment is key to understanding how the child is progressing. The curriculum checklist has many columns, and one of the columns allows us to observe a child in a preschool environment. So the lead might be able to do some observations in the regular day-to-day class with the child. But it's still important that that lead take the time to interact with the child one-to-one and assess. Then the lead will write the objectives, steps, and create a data sheet, the full treatment package for the child for the quarter. It's important that that lead makes sure that all the staff working with the children have an opportunity to read over those objectives, understand where the child is headed in terms of their next quarter goals. And obviously, the lead will also be the main person monitoring the progress for the child over that quarter and throughout as much time as the child's participating in that group environment. Small group activities are those activities I referred to earlier when we select specific children to comprise a small group. They're often led by a few staff. One person is leading that activity, but there's often what we call invisible support, which supports the facilitation of skills for particular children who might need it. These can be really short activities. The emphasis is that learning opportunities should be provided every 30 to 60 seconds. Many times that's the adult, but sometimes it's the facilitation between a peer interaction. These group activities should be fun and motivating for children, carefully planned out so that children enjoy these learning opportunities. And multiple objectives can be targeted in these activities. Next, you'll have an opportunity to watch a very skillful therapist and invisible support in Australia in our group program at the La Trobe Autism-Specific Early Learning and Care Centre. Pay attention to these various principles or suggestions that we've made about small group activities.
Hayley, look what I've got. Hayley. Oh, who's going to have a turn? Oh, Xavier's going to have a turn. Hayley, look what Xavier's got. Ooh.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Wow, Xavier's counting.
Thank you.
My turn. Xavier, Holly said my turn. Wait, Hayley.
4 minutes.
Oh, say in a minute, Holly.
Alright.
Oh, what's Xavier doing? He's twisting. He's
Twisting Harley.
twisting. Alright, Xavier, we're going to count to 5 and then it's his turn. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now Holly's turn. 5. Give to Holly. No, Holly's turn first because Holly said my turn. Yay! What's Holly going to do?
My turn.
Oh, let's see. Oh, can you press it, Holly? Oh! Oh! Finger! Oh!
Harley.
Oh, like this, Holly. Twist. That's it. Holly's twisting. Twist, twist, twist. Oh, yeah, Xavier's twisting with his hand. Look, oh, and Hayley's twisting. Twist, twist, twist. Wait, Hayley.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to count in a minute.
A Harley.
Oh, what's in there? There's a bird.
A cow now.
All right, should we count to 5 or 6?
9.
9. All right, let's count to 9. Ready? Holly, we're going to count to 9 and then Hayley's turn. Ready? 1, 2. Can you help me count, Xavier?
3.
4. Oh, Holly's finished. Oh, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Thanks, Holly. It's Hayley's turn. Oh, what's Hayley doing? Oh, look. Wow. Oh, what's Hayley doing? Is she twisting as well? Look, Holly. Oh, I want to show Holly. Oh, look, it's flashing. It's flashing. Wow, the light's flashing. Cool. Whoa. All right, Hayley, are we ready for our story? Oh. 1, 2, 3, are you finished? Are you finished, Hayley? No, all right. Well, we're going to finish in a minute and then we're going to have our story. Ding dong.
Ding dong.
All right. What shall we count to and then we'll have the story?
1.
Count to 1? All right, ready? 1. Oh, he's got 1 finger.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh my goodness. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, we're finished now, Hayley. Hayley, give. Finished now. We can do more later. All right, time for our story. We turn it off. Off. We can do more clock later. All right.
So having just watched that video, I'd like to highlight a few ESDM teaching strategies that you just observed. I'd also like to talk through a few objectives that the teacher was working on with the children, as well as focus on some G-ESDM teaching strategies. So first, for the Early Start Denver model, it's very important that the teacher or the staff person or therapist is providing clear antecedent behavior consequence chains. And this skillful therapist is doing just that. Each child knows what is being expected of them, and she's consequating their behaviors with praise, natural praise. She's helping children utilizing the least to most prompting hierarchy. She's focusing on turn taking, which is very important in the ESDM. And children are learning lots of things in this small group activity. They're learning not only to wait their turn, but to observe what other children are doing with this object. They're also learning how to imitate gestures, that twisting motion that she modeled many times during that activity, as well as counting. In terms of the G-ESDM strategies, I'd like just to highlight 2. First off, child attention. Here, in this activity, the therapist is less concerned about the child attending to her as much as she wants the children to watch each other and attend to one another, as well as initiate with one another. And there's a very clear opportunity that the therapist and the invisible support have to work together to support a child's learning in a particular moment. And during that moment, what happens is the therapist and the invisible support engage in some nonverbal communication themselves to determine when to provide that support for the child. You may want to go back to the video and look at these strategies now that I've highlighted them for you. Here's another small group activity video for you to watch.
Is it good? Mmm, yum.
Squeeze!
Does he like that one?
Yucky!
Oh, he says yucky.
Make a mess!
Oh, Pooh Bear. Made a big mess. Need to clean you up. Look, bang, 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 bang. Clean him up. Clean him up. Ah, made a big mess of Pooh Bear. That's better. Oh, Bear. Oh, you want a cloth, Maxie?
salad time.
I got some toast. More, Maxie.
In that last video, you were able to see a lot of tremendous learning going on for the children in that video. They were sharing experiences, they were playing and engaged in a dramatic play theme, they were motivated. It was a really nice activity. And I'd like to break it down a little bit right now from the perspective of what was the staff doing during those activities. So in the G-ESDM, we are thinking about 3 particular roles in each group time activity. The opener starts the activity with the children, and they remain in the activity throughout the duration of that theme. They also close that activity. There is a staff member who's assigned the bridge, and the bridge is somebody whose job it is to make sure that all of the children transition to the activity from another activity. So there's a moment in that video when you see another child sort of wander and move around, take a look at what is happening with the children that are focused on the Play-Doh. That child is being followed by a bridge. That child will not be left alone to just wander aimlessly in the environment. That bridge is going to make sure that all of the children that are supposed to be in an activity and engaged, in fact, remain in that activity. It's okay if they need a little break and have a little bit of a wander, but they're going to come back into purposeful, functional play or activity. So this lead or opener, bridge, and closer role is very important for the success of children learning in these various activities. Also, the invisible support role, which can be the bridge role, is really important to facilitate that children are, in fact, engaged in activities at the level that they can offer. So, for example, if a child needs prompting, that invisible support is the person who might help that child with those physical supports. But that invisible support is also engaged in activities when they're not needed in that role. So in that Play-Doh activity, you see 2 adults engaged in play with the children. Most of the time, the invisible support is sitting silently behind the children. But in this video, you see the invisible support near the children and engaging in the activity as the children don't need much physical prompting in this activity. One of the challenges of the group environment when we're thinking about multiple children is how do we keep track of multiple children with multiple objectives in multiple domains? And it is a challenge. And so we have learned some tips or suggestions that I'm going to offer. It's really important as we're planning activities that we create cheat sheets or smaller condensed versions of our data sheets to keep the staff on target for the child learning in those activities. So if I were doing an activity on art, I might take those fine motor skills for each of the children and have them near the table or on the table that I was working with those art activities. The idea is to keep the consistent group schedule so that we know what children will be learning each day or each week and can monitor progress as they're going through those various activities. As I've been sharing with you, group ESDM requires a lot of careful planning. And one of the areas that we plan for is transitions. We hear a lot that parents are concerned that children really have difficulty moving from one activity to another. And so we want to make sure that we have thought through for each child how to successfully move and engage in activities. We want children to independently move from, say, a play center to outside time and use the normal social cues that the teacher or staff or other children are providing. But they have to know where they're going. So I'd like to show you this next video on how this staff member transitions children from outside to inside.
Body song first, and then jingle bells. Mommy said body song. All right, ready? Xavier's gonna roll. Ready, set. Oh, Jacob's turn. And then Max. All right. No. Jacob's turn. He rolled face. Oh, what's Jacob doing? He's nodding. That's it. Let's nod our heads. Let's nod. Wait, first we're gonna nod. Let's nod our heads. Let's nod. That's it. Let's nod our heads. Should we nod fast or slow? Fast. Oh, and shake. Look, Jacob's shaking. Oh, and Xavier's tapping his feet. Oh, we're shaking and tapping. And stop. No.
So in this video, you can see that the therapist is outside with the items that she's going to use in the next activity. They're like transitional objects, and she holds them up and shakes them as she is offering the children to come inside and play in this small group activity. And she continues to offer them as a visual reminder of what they're going to be doing when they enter into the classroom and have a very clearly defined place to sit. And they sit down in this activity, and then she offers a choice, another key ESDM teaching strategy. If you have the opportunity to have meals or snack in your group ESDM sessions, this offers the children multiple opportunities to engage in both the appropriate functional behaviors of eating with various utensils, but also to engage in social interactions. Therefore, it is very key that your staff or the therapist are engaged with the children at the table during meals. Oftentimes, we had our staff sit at the end of the table and eat their lunch with the children, talking with them and engaging them, modeling how to have conversations and how to pass items, say the salt, from one person to another. Children should be face-to-face to encourage conversations and interactions. And all of the principles of a small group activity, including data taking, are incorporated during a meal. One of the most joyful and encouraging aspects of working in a group environment is watching children with autism spectrum disorder develop friendships. That's facilitated by supported peer interactions. Children can grow from learning how to just imitate their peers to sharing interests with their peers. It's really important that the therapists are thinking through and planning for peer interactions, supporting peer interactions in every activity that's offered. Some of those strategies include face-to-face positioning. And in the ESDM, we're also often thinking about how children are looking at us, whereas in the group ESDM, we're thinking about how children are looking at each other. For some children, objects are the motivating factor. It's not yet the peer. So having objects and multiple objects can help those peer interactions. Whenever children are engaging in some interactive experience, we want to manage the distractors and provide opportunities for those interactions to be sustained. Our role as adults is to facilitate that interaction and not intrude so much that it takes over for that child or set of children. As I just said, multiple objects can facilitate peer interactions. Objects that are interesting and motivating for the children, And double sets of objects can often foster imitation for children. So having multiple sets of hats and sunglasses and various items, musical instruments and such, help children to watch their peers and what they're doing with these objects and begin to develop the spontaneous imitation skills that we know encourage learning. So because peer interaction is so key to the G-ESDM, it's been added as its own individual fidelity item in the G-ESDM fidelity tool. As Dr. Rogers explained, fidelity of implementation is important to ensure that we are utilizing the strategies that support children in the ESDM and G-ESDM. I'd like to conclude this learning module on the G-ESDM on a very important topic: data taking. It is important that we remember that no matter how many children we have in a group activity, we must take accurate data for each child in each activity. What gets measured improves. And we want these children, just like in the individual ESDM, to make rapid progress in all of the developmental domains targeted. So it's important that we take daily data or session data, and it's important that we summarize that data so that we can review the progress and make any implementation changes as necessary. Thank you for the opportunity to share our work with the G-ESDM in a preschool environment. This has been our very rich experience in learning from children and families about how to make this adaptation possible. As I mentioned, our adaptation was in the context of a long daycare or preschool setting. But we certainly believe that the group environment could be utilized in a clinical format for shorter amounts of time with the same principles. I hope that this has been a valuable learning experience for you.